Hey, hola, hello. So, we have made a couple of videos. We will go on with our opinions, explanations about things that have happened and that influence us. And as we began doing that in Castellano, in Castilian, the language known as Spanish, we want to explain that also in other languages that we know. So, this will be our English version. So we are going to talk, I am going to explain many things about our history, which are related to our ideas, our identity, our religion, our politics, and our economy. So to talk about all these things, suddenly you start to talk, many people may listen, like or dislike many things, but it is not understood because it is out of context. So I thought about, maybe I was wrong, but I thought about previous explanation. And to center the subject that we're talking about, I thought, well, we must explain clearly the basic things we're talking about. So I focus on 3 points. What are we talking about? Why? And what for? So, what are we talking about? I'm talking about the transformations that took place in our culture. By the way, when I mean our culture, I mean European culture, Christian culture, so to a certain extent also American culture, because it is also a Christian culture in the last centuries. So, what has happened in this transformation of our culture? So, I must begin when Christianity appears and expands through the Mediterranean, through the Roman Empire. Why are we talking about this? Because I think it is necessary to understand where do we come from and what is our culture and what it was, how it transformed and why it transformed, to understand who we are and what for, in order to be more balanced, to be healthy. Because I think we are not healthy, I think we are ill, not just me. We as a society, all European societies, because we don't even know who we are, where we come from, which are our roots, and what happened. So we don't understand anything. So, in order to be healthy, we need first to understand. Then we can diagnose which are our problems, and then we can begin to improve. So, now we have this context that we're going to talk a little bit about it now, and these 3 basic questions. So, where do we come from? What was going on in the Mediterranean, in the Roman Empire 2000 years ago? Well, there was an important culture around here, around the Mediterranean. That culture, which I have named the culture of reference. What do I mean with culture of reference? Let's say that if you live in Asia 3,000 years ago, there were cultures that were developing faster and that began developing earlier than other cultures. In Asia, that is China and India, which didn't have those names, of course, 4,000 years ago, but they existed. And that is your reference, your point of reference, because you learn, for example, how to write and to read because of them, because of their influence, for example. So in the Mediterranean, our cultures of reference, the ancient ones, are clearly Mesopotamia and Egypt. But those cultures influenced, especially the Eastern Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean, because it was nearer. That's where Egypt is, and very close to Mesopotamia. And Greece took that culture. Greece influenced Rome, and Rome influenced all of us. So our culture of reference, from my point of view, is the Roman culture. So once this is said, the culture of reference of a part of the world influences their inhabitants and the nearby peoples or the neighboring peoples are very influenced. That means that if here we have the Mediterranean and in the south we have African jungles and in the north we have cold Scandinavia in the north of Europe, those cultures are also influenced by Roman culture, of course, by Egypt and Mesopotamia. So there is a culture of reference, and our culture of reference in the Mediterranean and in Europe, Roman culture, coming from the influence of ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia, had a beginning, a development, and then a decadence, of course, as all cultures have. So, this culture that developed, these values, they got to a point where the culture was totally abandoned. Culture was despised to the extent that schools closed down. So this is surprising, let's say, surprising. So how did this happen? What is the context? So let's talk about it. First, we must understand that when Roman culture begins to exist, well, really, when Roman influence gets to all of the Mediterranean and all the Mediterranean societies are part of the Roman Empire, approximately 2,000 years ago, there is a big transformation taking place, especially in the places that had not been part of an empire before. What is this transformation that we're talking about? You had no state, suddenly you have a state. That means that you had no laws, suddenly you have a law. You had no taxes, suddenly you have taxes. You had no concept of public services or the army. Suddenly you have public services and the army. So it's important because people have this trend. People tend to say that everything is horrible or everything is wonderful. And of course it is not like that, not in the present, not in the past. And there were some nice things, like suddenly the aqueduct, it's taking you water from the mountains to your house. Roman works, and well, that was a benefit for the people. And at the same time, having the army around, groups of foreigners who are armed in your land, maybe that was not something that you would fancy. So a bit of everything. And well, we want to insist on this because, why? Because as we think that not everything is wonderful, so not everything is horrible, so at least I don't think that there is good and evil. I think that it depends on your point of view. I look from here, this is good. I look from here, this is evil. So I don't think there is good and evil. So if someone, for example, says, as a comment said, well, you could talk about other things in history. Why not talk about, well, this is the subject we are interested in and we're going to talk about it. And if you think that you should talk about other subjects, come on, talk about other subjects. But if we talk about other subjects, then we will leave this subject. So you need to concentrate on a subject to really be able to talk about it. And by the way, all the other, let's say, excesses or crimes that were committed in any other time of history are also a pity from our point of view, because we don't think that they were evil or good, just human beings as we are. So there is a very important change when the Roman culture becomes the most powerful one. How did this happen? How did the Roman state, first the Republic, the Roman Republic, become the most powerful one? Well, in a very short way, I will just tell you that when Rome was growing, also other Mediterranean power was growing. This power was Carthage. So we have these two powers growing, Rome and Carthage, one in the center north of the Mediterranean, the other in the center south of the Mediterranean. What is today Italy and what is today Tunisia. there were three important wars between Rome and Carthage in a period of approximately 100 years. And this was approximately in the years between the 300 before Christ and the 200 before Christ. So in this period, there are these three wars. Different things happen in these three wars, but finally, at the end of the three wars, Rome has won and has defeated Carthage. What did that mean? That Rome, without the balance of a similar power, found itself with an uncontested power, so that led to excess. And that was a big problem for Roman societies, because they became the one and only power in the Mediterranean Sea. And that meant that it was not just a society that was developing. There was a huge amount of power, military power, political power, economical power, in Rome, because they ruled all the Mediterranean Sea. So that meant that many people started to become very ambitious and to fight for power. And not long after the victory over Carthage, just a century after that, civil wars began. Romans began to kill each other, something that was unthinkable 200 years before. So that was the beginning of the end, even if the empire was yet to develop. Then, when the republic is overthrown by Caesar, and the Roman Empire begins, and they conquer most of the Mediterranean Sea, then the seeds of the decadence are already there, and decadence begins, and let's say that all limits that existed disappear. So there were some red lines, you can do this and that, but you will never get to do this, but all red lines are abandoned, and any kind of treason or horrible acts can be committed in order to fulfill your ambitions and have power, which is something very sad from our point of view. I think that we are all part of one humanity, one nature, and we have this natural trend to understand each other, to coexist peacefully, and I think that it is a disaster, total disaster, when people get ambitious and they just are ready to do things that otherwise they wouldn't do, let's say ugly things, to get power. And power will not give you the beautiful things that a friendship or a family may give you. And well, that was our opinion. So, in this context of the decadence of Roman societies, there is something that begins, and this new beginning is the church, Christian church. The Christian church is born, it appears, it starts to develop approximately at the end of the first century. That is something like the year 80, 90 after Christ. And well, that was a very important symptom of the end of any kind of red lines, because the church had no red lines whatsoever. We will also want to say that the church appeared, and that is what we know. We cannot say that a new religion appeared. Why? Because there is no historical evidence that a new religion appeared. No. We don't even know if the characters in the New Testament, Jesus and the apostles, we don't know if they existed or not. All right, they may have existed and they may have not existed. It is a legend, a myth, like all the other legends and all the other myths. What is sure is that the Christian church existed. That is for sure. So we can't say, we don't have the information to say a new religion appeared, but we can say a group that says that it is religious, a group of priests appeared. And that was the beginning of a religion. We don't know if it started like that or with some founders of the religion who believed in it. So anyway, whereas it began in one way or another, we don't know. The origins are not clear. But what we know is that this group of priests, they said and they say that they are the messengers of God, and this way they manage to get money. So they make a business talking about God. So from our point of view, this is a fraud, because they use religion as a means to get money, which is something grave. I would say something dangerous, because that can lead you to a dangerous dynamic, as it has happened. This is the breaking of all red lines, because, for instance, if I want more money because I don't have enough, having 23 palaces and 20,000 slaves, so I want more. So maybe I will provoke a war with our neighbors who are very peaceful with us, and our people are also peaceful with them. Why? Because I want them. I just don't have enough with 20,000 slaves. I want 2 million slaves. So this, yes, it can happen with any kind of king, with any kind of kingdom. But when you break the red lines of playing with religion as a tool to get money and political power and economical power, then you will tell your people, you won't tell them, hey, you got to fight our neighbors, and if you don't do it, I will kill you. No, you tell your people, our neighbors hate our God, or they are possessed by a devil and they are a danger, which is false. It's a lie that you have created. You don't even believe it. But it's a good way to push people to become richer. So these were the red lines that were falling when church began to grow. So I think we have centered the subject we wanted to talk about. What has happened? That our culture has transformed. This is very important. I think it is clear that this is very important. And in order to understand what has happened, we need to talk about it. But the main point was to explain that our culture was like this, let's say, and it has transformed into a very different thing. There were red lines, and then they were broken. There was a harmony between one another, between people, and that was broken. There was a harmony between different ideas and different religions that was broken. There was a harmony with nature that has been broken too. So all these transformations have taken place, and this is the what. What has happened? This. And I think it's very important to understand it to be able to balance ourselves. Why do we want to talk about it? I think that now it's quite clear. We need to understand this to be able to change ourselves. What for? To change ourselves, to become more balanced, a bit more healthy. Well, to have some harmony and to know what was our ancient culture that was rooted in its ancient traditions. We need to know that in order to act in one way or another. So this is the introduction, let's say introduction, and next we will talk about those first years, first decades of church in power. See you.